And life has a way of breaking us down in ways we never imagined. Sometimes it's not the big storms that destroy us, but the little quiet battles that no one else sees. The silent tears cried at midnight, the disappointments that pile up like heavy bricks on our chest, the words spoken over us that cut deeper than knives. Brokenness can come in so many forms. It can be the brokenness of a heart betrayed, the brokenness of dreams that never came true, the brokenness of growing up in a home where love was absent, or the brokenness of carrying a weight that feels too heavy to bear. We look in the mirror and see fragments, pieces of who we used to be, and sometimes we convince ourselves that this brokenness is permanent. We tell ourselves that this is all we will ever know. But brokenness is not the end of the story. It is not the final chapter, because where we see broken pieces, God sees the raw material for a breakthrough. A breakthrough is not just an event, it is a divine shift, a moment when God steps into the very thing that has been holding you captive and turns it into the very thing that will set you free. What you call a mess, God calls the foundation for a miracle. What you call wasted years, God calls preparation. Sometimes we don't realize that brokenness is the sail where breakthrough grows. When we are at the end of ourselves, when we have no strength left to pretend, no energy left to fake it, that is when God's power is revealed. Because the truth is, God cannot bless who we pretend to be. He can only transform who we really are. And who we really are in our brokenness is the perfect canvas for His glory. Think about it. Every great story of transformation began with brokenness. Joseph was broken by betrayal, thrown into a pit by his own brothers, forgotten in a prison cell. Why at that very path of brokenness positioned him for a breakthrough that elevated him to the palace. Moses was broken in the desert, hiding from his past, wrestling with insecurity, and yet God used that brokenness to prepare him to lead a nation into freedom. Even Jesus himself was broken on the cross, his body shattered, his soul in anguish, but out of that brokenness came the greatest breakthrough humanity has ever known: resurrection, redemption, and eternal life. Your brokenness is not a curse, it is an invitation. An invitation for God to show himself strong in your weakness. Some of us have been praying for God to take away the pain, but sometimes he doesn't remove the pain, he transforms it. Sometimes he doesn't erase the struggle, he turns it into strength, because breakthrough is not about avoiding brokenness, it's about allowing God to use it. The very thing thought disqualified you is the very thing God will use to qualify you. The stone the builders rejected will become the cornerstone. The thing you thought was going to break you forever is the very thing God will turn into the testimony that sets others free. We live in a world that despises brokenness, a world that tells us to hide our scars, cover our pain, pretend like everything is fine. But scars are proof that you survived. Scars are proof that what tried to kill you didn't win. And correct. And scars are the evidence that God has the power to bring healing where there was once only hurt. That is why breakthrough doesn't come to the perfect, it comes to the broken who are willing to surrender. God cannot fill a cup that is already full of pride, ego, and self-sufficiency, but he can fill a vessel that is cracked, because it is through the cracks that his glory shines the brightest. So many people spend their lives running from brokenness, thinking it is weakness, when in reality brokenness is the doorway to breakthrough. If you had never been broken, you would not know God as a healer. If you had never been weak, you would not know him as your strength. If you had never been lost, you would not know him as the way, the truth, and the life. Brokenness creates dependency, and dependency creates intimacy. When everything else is stripped away and all you have is him, that's when you realize he was all you ever needed. And the breakthrough is not just about what God does for you. It's about what he does in you. Because sometimes we think breakthrough means God changes our situation. But the greatest breakthrough happens when God changes us. When bitterness turns into forgiveness. When fear turns into faith, when despair turns into hope, that's a breakthrough. You may still be walking through the valley, but your heart has shifted, your perspective has changed, your spirit has been lifted, and suddenly the valley doesn't have the power to define you anymore. There's something powerful that happens when you take the broken pieces of your life and place them in God's hands. He is the master potter, and he knows how to take shattered clay and remake it into something stronger than before. In Japanese art, there is a practice called kintsugi, where broken pottery is repaired with gold, making the cracks the most beautiful part of the vessel. That's what God does with us. He doesn't erase the cracks. He fills them with his glory. He doesn't pretend the scars don't exist. He makes them shine as evidence of his power. That's the breakthrough, when what was once your greatest wound becomes your greatest witness. And don't think breakthrough is only for the chosen few. Correct. Don't think it's just for the people you see on stage or the ones who look like they have it all together. Breakthrough is for you, for the single mother crying herself to sleep at night, for the man who feels like he has failed too many times, for the young person who doesn't know if they'll ever find their purpose. God specializes in taking ordinary, broken people and using them for extraordinary things. Your breakthrough may not look like someone else's, but it will be just as powerful, because the God who brought light out of darkness, the God who brought water out of a rock, the God who brought life out of a tomb, that same God is still moving, still working, still transforming brokenness into breakthrough. Struggles are something every single one of us understands. They come in different shapes and sizes, sometimes visible to the world and sometimes hidden deep in the shadows of our hearts. Struggles can be financial, when the bills keep stacking higher than the paycheck, and no matter how hard you work, it feels like you're still coming up short. Struggles can be emotional, when anxiety grips your chest and sleep runs away from your eyes. Struggles can be relational, when the people you thought would always stand by you suddenly walk away and leave you holding the pieces. And then there are the internal struggles, the battles no one sees, the silent wars in the mind, the voices of insecurity, guilt, and shame that whisper, "You'll never make it." Struggles have a way of draining strength, leaving us weary, leaving us questioning if we'll ever overcome. But what if the very thing you call a struggle is the very place God wants to show his strength? Because struggles are not just obstacles, they are opportunities. Opportunities for growth, opportunities for faith, opportunities for transformation. The Bible never said you wouldn't struggle. In fact, it promised that in this life you will have trials. But the promise doesn't stop there. It says, be of good cheer because there is a strength greater than your struggle. That means your struggle is not the final word. It means your weakness is not the end of the story. It means that where you feel like you cannot carry the weight anymore, that is where God steps in and gives you the strength to endure. Strength is not built in comfort. Strength is born in conflict. Just like muscles don't grow without resistance, a spiritual strength doesn't grow without struggle. Every push, every pull, every weight you lift in the gym of life is building something in you that comfort never could. You don't discover how strong you are when everything is easy. You discover it when life throws you to your knees and you get back up again. You discover it when the storm rages and yet you refuse to drown. You discover it when the struggle should have taken you out, but instead it trained you to fight, to endure, to believe. Think about David. He did not become strong when he faced Goliath. His strength was forged in the struggles of the field when he was alone watching sheep, fighting off lions and bears that no one else saw. It was in the hidden struggles that God was building the strength he would need for a public victory. Or think about Paul, who pleaded with God to take away his thorn, his struggle, his constant reminder of weakness. But God said, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my strength is made perfect in weakness." That means the very thing Paul wanted gone was the very thing God was using to reveal his power. The struggle wasn't there to destroy him, it was there to develop him. Sometimes the struggle is not about what God wants to remove, but about what he wants to release. He doesn't always take away the problem, but he gives you strength in the middle of it. He doesn't always silence the storm, but he strengthens you to walk on the water in the storm. He doesn't always close the mouths of the lions, but he gives you peace to sleep in the den with them. Struggles shift your dependence from yourself to him. They remind you that you are not in control, but you are connected to the one who is. And it is in that connection that true strength is born. A strength is not just the ability to keep moving forward. It is the ability to keep believing when everything around you says, give up. Strength is the voice that says, I will rise again when failure has knocked you down. Strength is the choice to forgive when bitterness is easier. Strength is the decision to love when hate would be justified. And that kind of strength is not natural. It is supernatural. It is not something you can produce by willpower. It is something God imparts when you surrender your weakness to Him. Isn't correct. And isn't it true that some of the struggles we thought would kill us ended up becoming the very things that built us? The heartbreak that broke us also taught us how to heal. The disappointment that crushed us also taught us how to hope again. The failure that embarrassed us also taught us how to stand back up with humility. If we had never been weak, we would have never discovered the strength God was placing in us all along. The struggle didn't just show us who we were, it revealed who God is. Sometimes your struggle is not even about you. Sometimes your struggle is about the testimony it will produce for someone else. Somebody is watching how you handle the weight, how you keep pushing even when it hurts, how you keep praying even when the answer hasn't come. They are learning strength not from your success, but from your struggle. Because success inspires people, but struggle connects people. When others see that you can survive what they are afraid of, it gives them hope that they can survive too. Your struggle becomes a seed of strength in somebody else's life. That's why the enemy fights you so hard in the middle of your struggle, because he knows if you ever realize that your struggle is producing strength, you will stop running from it and start growing through it. He knows that the pressure you are under is not breaking you. It is birthing something greater. Diamonds are formed under pressure. Gold is purified in fire. Warriors are made in battle. And faith is strengthened in struggle. The things that were meant to destroy you are the very things God uses to develop you. You may not feel strong right now. You may feel like the struggle has drained every ounce of energy you have. But strength is not the absence of weakness. It is the presence of God in the middle of your weakness. And as long as He is with you, you are stronger than you think. You may not be able to see it while you're in it, but when you come out, you will realize that what you thought was the end was really the beginning. What you thought was breaking you was really building you. What you thought was a curse was really a classroom where God was teaching you how to walk in strength you never knew you had. So many people settle for ordinary because they don't realize that God created them for extraordinary. Ordinary feels safe. Ordinary feels predictable. Ordinary doesn't demand too much from you, but ordinary was never meant to be your destiny. God didn't breathe His Spirit into you to live a life of mediocrity. He didn't design you in His image and place greatness inside of you just so you could blend into the background. You are not here by accident. You are not a mistake. You are not just another number on this earth. There is something extraordinary written into your DNA, something powerful that the world has never seen before, and the struggle of your life has been trying to convince you otherwise. Ordinary says you were born into the wrong family, grew up in the wrong neighborhood, don't have the right connections. Extraordinary says God takes the least likely, the overlooked, the underestimated, and He uses them to display His glory. Ordinary says you've made too many mistakes. You've failed too many times. Your past disqualifies you. Extraordinary says God chooses the broken vessels because they become the clearest carriers of his light. Ordinary says your circumstances will always define you. Extraordinary says God can pull you out of the pit and set your feet on solid ground. Think about how God works. He never chooses the obvious candidates. When he needed someone to defeat Goliath, he didn't pick the strongest soldier in Israel's army. He chose David, a shepherd boy who smelled like sheep, a boy whose own father didn't even think he was worth presenting. But God saw extraordinary hidden in the ordinary. When Jesus needed disciples, he didn't go to the synagogues and pick the most educated scholars. He chose fishermen, the tax collectors and zealots, ordinary men by the world's standards, but extraordinary when touched by the power of God. And even when God chose to bring salvation to the world, he didn't send his son through a royal palace. He sent him through a young virgin girl in a small town called Nazareth. Ordinary circumstances, extraordinary outcome. The extraordinary doesn't mean flashy. It doesn't mean famous. It doesn't mean the whole world knows your name. Extraordinary means your life carries purpose and impact beyond what you could ever produce on your own. Extraordinary means you walk into a room and light comes with you. Extraordinary means you raise children who will carry the touch further than you ever could. Extraordinary means you serve faithfully when no one is watching and heaven records every act. Extraordinary means you take what little you have, place it in the hands of God, and watch him multiply it until it touches nations. The problem is the world tries to convince you that you are just ordinary. Society labels you by your job, by your income, by your background. People box you into categories and expect you to stay there. But when God calls you extraordinary, no label can hold you. No limitation can stop you. No statistic can define you. You are not bound by where you started. You are propelled by where God is taking you. And the very things that made people count you out are the same things God will use to count you in. Ordinary is the boy with a sling and 5 stones. Extraordinary is when that sling takes down a giant. Ordinary is a little lunch of bread and fish. Extraordinary is when it feeds thousands. Ordinary is water sitting in jars. Extraordinary is when it becomes wine at the wedding feast. Ordinary is a man hanging on a cross. Extraordinary is when that man rises on the 3rd day and changes eternity. God specializes in taking what looks small, insignificant, and ordinary and turning it into something that shifts history. The enemy will try to keep you blind to the extraordinary within you. He will whisper that you don't matter, that your life makes no difference, that you'll never rise above average. He will surround you with voices that try to shrink you down to size, but you have to silence the lies and lean into the truth that God spoke over you before you were even born. Before your mother ever held you, God said, I set you apart. That means extraordinary has always been your inheritance, even when ordinary was all you could see. Extraordinary doesn't require perfection, it requires surrender. God is not looking for flawless people. He is looking for willing people. People who will say, Lord, here are my weaknesses, here are my flaws, here is my brokenness. use it, because extraordinary flows through surrendered hearts. The power of God is not attracted to pride, it is attracted to humility. When you admit, Lord, I can't do this without you, that's when he steps in and does what only he can do. And extraordinary is not always instant. Sometimes it's hidden in seasons of waiting, in years of obscurity, in moments where it feels like nothing is happening. But don't mistake delay for denial. God often develops the extraordinary in secret before he reveals it in public. David had to tend sheep before he became king. Joseph had to endure prison before he stepped into the palace. Esther had to live as an orphan before she became a queen. Jesus himself spent 30 years in obscurity before 3 years of public ministry. Extraordinary is often birthed in ordinary seasons.